the social media that can happen to you if you're not at least aware that, you know, it's going to happen whether you understand technology or not. It's going to happen to you, you know, whether you just look at it and go, damn it, those guys are saying bad things about me. You have an opportunity to jump in and try to, bring some sort of mediation to it, or just say positive things so that the tenants end up liking you, because it could often be fickle. So I'll pass the mic over. Hopefully that was basically what you do.
Yeah,
and I'll pass the mic over to Steve, and thanks.
Thank you, Richard. 30 years experience in the apartment industry is something I definitely do not have. I'm actually 30 years old, and as Richard said, we've been around 1 year, and what we're helping property managers like yourself do is communicate with your residents and increase retention by doing that. So we work with several great companies that are here today, and I want to start off just by thanking you guys for coming. So I want to thank Jason for throwing such a great event. Something like this has been going on in the United States for about 5 years, 6 actually since 2005. So it's great that as Canadians we're finally getting on board. I want to thank Jeff. He had a great social media talk, and the fact that he brought up Harrison, which is a client of ours, gave you a little window there as to what we actually do. And I want to thank you guys. You know, you had 2 choices and you decided to come here. So thanks for coming. So we've touched on a bit about me. You know, I've been around for about a year, 30 years old, and I have a background in social media, a background in marketing, and that's what led me into this space. But I also want to talk a bit about you guys, because I'm an outsider, and this past year I've spent talking, interacting with property managers, and it's been an interesting time. You guys are an interesting species. You know, you're a little cautious, which is fine. Some might accuse you of being a little slow to adapt, but I would never say that. And you know, you have a bit of a look before you leap mentality, and you like to do things right. So what I've tried to do here is create a presentation that'll show you what's already happening, so you can look at it, and then hopefully over the next few months, you can take that leap as well. So, online resident retention strategies. This is sort of the first slide to get us into it. Our goals are to make the basics easier, to show you how social media can help you in your retention, and to show you exactly how that's done. So one thing I want to avoid is that, he's the young guy up in front, he's just going to talk about the new up and coming, and he doesn't really know how things work. So I'm going to spend the first bit talking about the basics of retention and how online software can help you meet those basics. So why are we here? I'm just going to break it down. Online, I define that as anything web or software enabled, any sort of software or website. Residents, it's easy to forget sometimes when they're constantly badgering you about stuff, but they are your customer. Retention, I got this off Wikipedia, is the activity an activity an organization undertakes to decrease consumer defection, right? So in your world, that takes the shape of turnover. And I don't want to get in the whole debate. There are some positive things about turnover as far as rent rates, but for this presentation, just journey with me in that we don't like turnover. We want to keep it down, and I'll show you why. And then strategies equal plan of action, so showing you exactly what to do. So this is just kind of a high-level chart, basically showing us by improving our process, our communication, our responsiveness, our satisfaction. What we'll be bringing down is our controllable turnover, our turnover costs, our marketing costs, our concessions, and our vacancy loss. So what are the facts? Well, the facts are that a lot of customers, whether they're unhappy or not, they won't complain to you. 96% will simply tell their friends, tell their family, but you're actually the last person they're going to tell. And 90%, once they've left your building, they won't come back. If they've had a bad experience, there's a lot of property management companies out there. Why would they Why would they do that? And 13% will tell at least 20 others. And we know today in social media, it's much more than that. But what does this mean? The meaning behind this is that there's benefit in creating a place where you can draw out those complaints. Okay, now that sounds very counterintuitive, but as society is moving along and everyone's getting online and everyone has a voice, that's becoming a necessity. People get really frustrated when they can't express how they feel. If you think about what Twitter and what Facebook are enabling, they're enabling people to express themselves constantly all the time. So companies are jumping on board with that, and as a property manager, you're dealing with serious issues. And if your residents don't feel they have a voice, they're going to get extremely frustrated, and as we can see, they'll just leave, and that costs you money. So, controllable turnover costs. Now, I think this is a little debatable, but StatusFacts is a company in the States, and they say 60% of turnover is controllable. And I'm interested to see if you guys agree with that. So if you think 60% is about right, can I ask you to put up your hand real quick? Is it too high for controllable turnover? Hands up. Too low for controllable turnover? Okay, so I'll say that, so maybe this is a little high. Let's say 40% of turnover is controllable. I don't think that takes away from the points. StatusFacts was saying that each turnover costs around $4,000, actually costs you as a company. The property managers that I deal with and talk to on a day-to-day basis, they put it more at $2,000. So either way, if you're looking at a portfolio of 1,000 units and you have, 30% turnover, that adds up to a lot of money. And just for my own credibility, what we put in there, vacancy loss days, concessions, marketing, that's how we came up with that number. So the next logical question is kind of what makes everybody so angry? Why do residents get mad at their property manager? So I'm a resident, and I've been a resident for a number of years, so I can speak from personal experience. Neighborhood Buzz was actually born out of some frustration we had in our communication from our property manager. So things like, we had a maintenance guy just kind of barge in one morning. I was eating breakfast. I wasn't fully dressed. Apparently, there was a notice slipped under the door, but I didn't see that. There's a lot of things pushed under my door. I'm not really, picking that stuff up. It's, there's so much communication. So that was poor communication is one thing that led me to start this company. So that's something that frustrates residents. Service requests not filled out properly, and what I mean by that is, if a resident calls in or emails you, and then the maintenance guy shows up, and he doesn't know exactly what he's trying to fix, if there wasn't good instruction, that can lead to some frustration. Obviously, rental increases. I'm not even going to get into that one. Noisy neighbors, security issues. But according to this, and this was from a company called Appfolio, the number one issue that makes residents angry is the property manager who acts like they don't care. And the great thing about that is it's 100% in your control. And what I'm going to show you is how software, technology can make that job much easier. So, what do residents want? I hope you guys like baby photos, because I have a few. And this one says, the more I think, the more confused I get. And this is a safe place, because I talk to property managers all the time, and I know residents can be frustrating, right? Residents say they want one thing, they want another thing. A great example, my friend Ivan told me is, the resident that complains says they have a terrible landlord, and they've been living in the same building for 20 years, right? How terrible is your landlord if you don't ever move? They couldn't be that bad. Another common problem is residents, oh, the hallway needs to be fixed, or, the outside just looks so crappy. Our balconies are falling apart. And then as soon as you start to take the construction measures to fix that problem, they're complaining about the noise, right? Which is ridiculous. And I realize as, property managers, you face those types of frustrations, and it can kind of feel like you're talking to a child that's impossible to please. And I understand that, and it's okay to laugh at that in this space, because I won't tell your customers. So here's some wise words for us. As we're thinking about the residents that can be hard to please, we're bringing it back to the basics, and that's where I'm starting from. So those who fail to master the basics of serving well usually fail. And brings us to the next question is, well, what are the basics? And talking to you guys about retention, it came apparent that technology and all these websites and everything you've heard about, it's just a plethora of information. They simply accentuate your basics. So that's something I really want you to understand, is they are just an amplification. It's like Jeff was talking about. If your basics are doing really well, you throw social media on those basics, you've got a fire, right? If your basics aren't well, if you have some basic needs of the residents that you're not consistently meeting and you throw social media on that, that can also blow up in your face. And we'll get to that later. So just, the basics are providing a safe and clean environment, being polite, compassionate, returning residents' inquiries quickly, and doing it right the first time. So I'm sure you can all relate to this. None of this really matters if we're not meeting the basic needs of the residents, and it's always nice to have a bit of a refresher. So another quote down here from Satisfax. The goal of providing top-level customer service is to minimize negative experiences and to have systems in place to reach out and identify those issues so that remarkable recoveries can occur. And as I get into Facebook, what Facebook has really enabled is when you have an issue and you make a remarkable recovery, everybody can see it. Everybody can see that recovery. And people marketing and all these things don't matter near as much when you can go to a Facebook community and you can look at the conversations that the property manager is having and say, wow, they really care about their residents. Look how he handled this person. She's clearly upset, and they, were very polite in their response, and maybe I'd want to live in a building like that.